one of football is officially over, and my oh my, we have so much to talk about. Welcome back to another episode of The Only Playbook. I am Sweetcar. I got Shovit with me. Shovit, 1-0 in League of Record. Both
That's
you
right.
and I both. How are you feeling, my man?
I feel good, man. I scored 125 points, which is the second most. You scored the most. Congrats to you, man. I think you had a solid squad, and you got the solid squad for the rest of the season. So I think I lucked out a little bit because I was playing against CMC down by like 15 points, but Moody stepped up, the Dallas defense stepped up, so a lot to like, and I'm excited to go 1-0.
Dude, I wonder, who knows if CMC played, if more field goals turned into touchdowns, but shit, Moody getting you all those points, It might not have even mattered if CMC played. You probably would have still won, bro. Like,
I know.
Moody
I was thinking the same thing, and I'm like, maybe CMC gets into the touchdown, because what I saw from Jordan Mason was like, he's shifty, but like he's not like breaking tackles, like stiff arming and doing some of the things that CMC does, but he played very well, and he's going to be great moving forward. So I'm like, maybe CMC makes it different, but George Kittle, I was playing against him, didn't step up. And then the Jets defense, that was atrocious too. So maybe I still win, but a win's a win no matter how you do it.
Yeah, man, you're gonna take the dubs. Sometimes they're ugly. Sometimes you scored the second to least, and you beat the guy who scored the least. Right? Would have lost to everybody else, and that's the way fantasy works. So you take the dubs when you can get them. Again, we have so much to discuss. A little bit of a different segment if you've been, tuning in to us for the last couple of years. Recap episodes have gone differently, but we're trying to structure it in a way that we feel is going to be most valuable from a fantasy football perspective. So 3 segments here, Shovit. 3 segments. First segment we're going to usually do is how did we do? So every preview episode, we are giving you start, sits, boom, busts, hidden gems. And the only way to understand how that advice transpired or panned out is to look back and see what happened, right? We want the people to understand that, with all this advice, we ourselves at least keep track of our results. But if we're not conveying that to the public, they don't know how well we're doing. They don't know if our advice is making sense, unless the people that are actually taking it. So I think it's really easy and real cool to just recap kind of some of the stuff we talked about in the preview episode. And then it's week 1, but man, there were some dud performances. So second segment is going to be, are we staying calm, Shovit, or are we sounding the alarm? So I've gotten texts from a lot of people, surprisingly, about being like, yo, dude, I don't know about this guy. And I'm like, it's 1 week. It's 1 week. But there are some things contextually that I think need to be said so it can at least put some perspective and shed some light on some of the situations that these players are in. And then obviously it wouldn't be an episode of fantasy football if we didn't talk to the folks about waiver wire pickups. So who is on our waiver wire watch list as waivers hit tonight in the middle of the night? So you want to wake up tomorrow morning and grab the guys you need. So those 3 segments we think will be most fruitful, but as always, we are open to feedback. So if there's something you want to hear, something you want us to talk about when it comes to fantasy football, let us know. Shovit, you got anything for the people before we kick it off with how did we do?
I think we did great. I know we're going into this segment, but I think we did really good last week. And this is the reason why you guys need to continue listening to our podcast.
Yeah, it is 1 week, right? So obviously take everything with a grain of salt, but the reality is you stack up dubs to make the playoffs. Every week ends up mattering in the grand scheme of things. So real quickly, the things we discussed last week, start them or sit them, right? Quarterbacks, we had Jayden Daniels versus Dak Prescott. Leaning on the Jayden Daniels side because of the rushing upside. What did that man do? He did nothing but run the football. Dak was my biggest bust of the week. And ironically enough, the matchup wasn't the reason it was a bust. It was the opposite. It was almost like the matchup was too easy. The Browns were awful. The Cowboys completely dominated the game, and it didn't require Dak to have to do much, only scoring 11 points, quarterback 22. So obviously people drafted Dak to be their starter, just not an ideal matchup. And despite it not being because of the matchup, the results ended up working out in the favor of benching Dak and starting Jayden Daniels. So that was a massive play.
I mean, it was just running the ball so much, right? Rico Dowdle, even Zeke Elliott, right? They were just running the ball, and there wasn't any need to throw it downfield. You saw CeeDee Lamb produce and get a couple of receptions here and there. Brandon Cooks gets a touchdown, but it was just an easy game. Browns' rushing defense was really poor this week, so I think that helped out. That didn't help Dak, but it should be fine moving forward, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think what we've seen with Jayden Daniels is the rushing upside warrants this guy to be started basically every week. So don't even think about that anymore. Jordan Love versus Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams ended up only scoring 7, not the output we wanted, but we were kind of on the fence. We actually didn't mind which way you leaned. Jordan Love ends up getting hurt despite scoring more points. So kind of a little bit of a wash there. Rhamondre Stevenson absolutely dominated the backfield over Chuba Hubbard. I think second or third in the NFL in carries in week 1. Very efficient, found the end zone, so absolutely outsmashed Chuba Hubbard. You looked at David Montgomery was a no-brainer over Javonte Williams, found the end zone in overtime to win the game, so completely outproduces him. The Malik Nabers and Rashee Rice debate, a lot closer than we expected, but Rashee Rice takes the cake there, despite Nabers being in a reverse game script, needing to throw the football. I think that Vikings defense is a problem, and Daniel Jones could end up being a problem for Malik Nabers the rest of the season. So that's something we will probably talk a little bit more about. And then I am so happy about this one because I think how you talked about it in the offseason and what transpired in week 1 was identical. Chris Godwin moving back into the slot. That Commanders defensive secondary I talked about being probably one of the worst in football. Both Mike Evans and Godwin have an absolute day. Godwin, 18.3 fantasy points, finds the end zone, 8 catches. And on the flip side, it was against Amari Cooper, which was the starter sit. Amari Cooper, not a great day. Drops a touchdown, which would obviously have made his stat line a little bit better.
Yes.
But still, the target share and everything with the defense of the Commanders at secondary, I think if you're a player or a team that has receivers starting against the Washington Commanders rest of the season, you're going to feel pretty confident deploying those skill positions.
Yeah, and I don't think you should be worried about Amari Cooper either. I think Deshaun Watson had a bad game because the defensive line for the Cowboys defense is that good, and he had like no help whatsoever. I mean, it was like 17 hits on Deshaun Watson, 5 sacks. You're just not going to get the offense flowing that way. But yes, Cooper needs to catch that diving catch, and his stats look a lot better moving forward. Again, this is another guy that I'm not worried about either. Even Jerry Jeudy, once this offensive line gets better for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, my only worry is just Deshaun Watson himself, to be honest. I don't know what really is left there. I don't know. He seems like a guy that really loves to run into a ton of sacks, which is very unfortunate. I know he's trying to extend plays and do all that, but I don't know if he's lacking the athleticism he once had, but those extended plays aren't necessarily turning into anything great either. So it just seems very dysfunctional there. And it's not like this is his first year back, right? We gave him that excuse already. He's had an entire offseason and he's still struggling. And I just don't know if it goes beyond the team. It is just Deshaun Watson. His mechanics aren't there. He's not confident anymore. Dude, I don't know what it is.
Here's the thing. They didn't have 2 starting offensive tackles this game, right? When you don't have 2 starting offensive tackles, and you're playing against a Dallas Cowboys rush like that defensive line, it's gonna be an uphill battle right then and there. So when they get these guys back and that offensive line is better, I really think that these receivers are going to be fine, and Njoku will be fine as well. Like this offense is going to be okay. So is Deshaun Watson. It's just going to take time before the offensive line is healthy.
Yep, absolutely. My boom pick of the week was T. Higgins. This was before we found out that he was a late scratch and Jamar Chase ended up playing, so that was a moot point. But your show of it, you said Rashid Shaheed, and Rashid Shaheed, what did he do? He found the end zone on a deep touchdown. That man is electric, limited targets, but that's what we saw last year, right? If you want somebody who has an upside potential to hit a home run and score a touchdown, a deep bomb, because you're looking for somebody like that, that is, I mean, exactly spot on what he ended up doing for you in week 1. So if anybody had the audacity, if you will, to start Rashid Shaheed in week 1, I mean, it paid off for you. So kudos there on the boom pick. And I mentioned the bust pick. It was Dak, obviously situation warranted that. But what about the hidden gems, man? I'm pretty excited about my hidden gems. I doubled down on the Bears. I said Cairo Santos and I said Bears defense. And if you did both of those, you left with your defense and your kicker combining for 36 fantasy points. And that typically, Shove It, is going to win you fantasy week. So the Bears defense all year long needs to be somebody that you are rostering. They're still not rostered in a lot of leagues. And Cairo Santos, because what we've seen from that offense, I know it's week 1, but I think they're going to be able to move the ball. They're going to slowly start to find their rhythm, but I'm putting more faith in that offense being able to move the ball between the 20s a lot. It's going to give Santos a lot of opportunity to kick the football. So I was very happy about the way that turned out.
Yeah, I mean, that was great. That was great. On the flip side, I wasn't very happy with how the Bengals turned out. Dude, that was like out of nowhere. But you know what? You know what's crazy about this is, like, when I look back at this, Bengals in the first 2 weeks are 2-9 with their current head coach, who I can't remember his name right now. It's ridiculous.
Zach Taylor?
Zach Taylor, yeah. With Zach Taylor, the 2-9 in the first 2 weeks, right? So, I mean, it's almost like a recipe for disaster. The Patriots came out, they ran the ball well. They just and the Bengals never got set up on offense well, and it just kind of didn't work out for them. So, but I still like it. I still like targeting defenses that have a decent matchup. Next week, the Commanders play the Giants, and I'm still kind of leaning towards getting the Commanders as defenses. I might, it might not work out for me, but hey, you know what? That's the best matchup on paper. So let's see if this still works next week as well.
Yeah, I like that idea. We'll talk about the defensives to stream later in the waiver wire watch list. But I think it is. I think the process was there. The results weren't, right? I mean, I think everybody, the Bengals were probably the number one most streamed defense in all of fantasy football in week 1. But the dysfunctionality of that team heading into the season can't be understated. And like you said, now it seems like it's kind of a trend. Most of those guys don't ever play a snap in the preseason. And I think that's weighing a lot in the first couple of weeks while they're getting set. Not to mention the dysfunctionality with the Chase contract bullshit. Not to mention T. Higgins being healthy for the whole time and then all of a sudden being a late scratch, right? So you go from thinking your game plan is T. Higgins is your wide receiver 1, Chase might sit out, to Chase all of a sudden being like, I'm showing up, Higgins is out, Joe Burrow's been hurt, hasn't practiced enough, and the team as a whole just hasn't got the reps. So you definitely saw that on paper. Unfortunately, Tisha Shote, that was his survivor pick, so that did not work out for him. Shove it. You crushed it with your Cowboys survivor pick. They absolutely dismantled the Browns. And my Bills survivor pick, though scary, they end up pulling it out against the Cardinals at home. I think with the survivor, we should just turn it into weekly pick'em so we can just see who has the best record at the end of the year. Because again, the reality is, I know last year was an outlier with me going 17-0 and then losing in the final week. I just think all of us at some point will lose, and it would be dumb to not have to play the rest of the year. So I like kind of just doing overall record for the whole year. You're just picking
weekly pick them, but we can't pick the same teams that we picked prior. So
absolutely. Yes. I like it. I like that. All right. Good enough, man. So that is what we're going to do every week. We want to recap how do we do. And I think like Shobit said, we did pretty damn good for week 1. So this is why you should be tuning into this podcast. More information to follow. Now, there are a lot of fantasy owners that after 1 week are wanting to hit the pivot button. Man, did I make a decision? Bad decision. Number 1 pick, first round pick, getting me 1.4 points. What is going on? So this is the segment we discussed earlier. Are we staying calm or are we sounding the alarm? Shobit, the number 1 player on here for me, and I'm going to let you kick us off. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. Man caught 1 catch for 4 yards, 0.9 fantasy points in half-point PPR scoring formats. Talk to me.
Yeah, man. Look, it's the Buffalo Bills versus the Cardinals, and they had one strategy, and that strategy was to stop Marvin Harrison, right? And so I think this is going to be an anomaly. This guy is an electric receiver, and he is the wide receiver 1. He's going to command most of the targets when throughout the season. Now, when you have double team on Marvin Harrison, you'll need to get guys like Trey McBride involved. You'll need to get Michael Wilson involved. And we saw that. We saw Michael Wilson. Trey McBride was that first read on that touchdown that Michael Wilson got. And then Michael Wilson was wide open, so he gets the catch there. But I don't think that's going to happen every single week. I think that they are going to game plan for find ways to get Marvin Harrison the ball. I wouldn't be nervous or worried about Marvin Harrison. They're going to find a way to get him the ball. It's just a matter of time before that happens, and it can happen next week.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's a rookie receiver. He played 90% of the snaps, 36 of 38 passing downs. He was on the field participating in the routes. You talked about Trey McBride. He led the team in targets with 9. You had Greg Dortch with 8. Connor had 4. And then it was Marvin Harrison Jr. with 3, with 2 guys with 2. So a little bit spread out, but you expect guys like Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. to lead that pack moving forward. And the other thing that's just a slight cause for concern is it did feel like the game script wasn't getting away from them. It wasn't like they needed to run the football a bunch and that took them away from passing. I mean, it was a shootout. The Bills came back. So the Cardinals had every opportunity to pass the football. So it is just strange having drafted a receiver in the top 5 and you only target him 3 times in the first week that he plays. Just really strange to me. But like you said, it's 1 week. We're not going to overreact. The guy is talented. So I'd say we are going to stay calm in lockstep with that one. Number 2 on the board here, Chris Olave, 2 catches, 11 yards, 2.1 fantasy points. I will kick this one off, Shobit. I am still staying calm on Olave. He played 79% of the snap counts, 25 of 27 passing downs with Derek Carr on the field. It was most by any receiver. He did only have 8.7% target share, though, but it is 1 week. I think the reality of what happened here is the Panthers are awful. You saw a bomb to Shaheed score a touchdown. It seemed like every play that was designed to score a touchdown, especially in the red zone with Moreau, with Juwan Johnson, they were scoring a touchdown. Now, in reality, when you have a wide receiver one, you would like plays to be designed for that player, but he is the best weapon on that team. Maybe not named Alvin Kamara, maybe named Alvin Kamara because he's younger. So I think when you have a team that is, one superstar and everybody else is just kind of a bunch of Jags or just a guy, you're going to have defenses focus on them, similar to what we talked about with Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, this is a guy that last year was top 5, top 10 in target share, in air yards. So we know that Derek Carr, who was the same quarterback last year, loves to throw this guy the football. So I think this was an anomaly because the Carolina Panthers are so bad that it didn't matter what the Saints were doing. They were being successful. So I am completely calm on Chris Olave. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the summary of this whole segment is going to be it's week 1, right? There's no reason to panic, and you're dealing with a Clint Kubiak led offense, who was when Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen had great season, 10 touchdown seasons back in I think 2021, right? So what he does is he runs the ball really well, that he utilizes running backs, and then they set up these play actions and play action for passes downfield. And so I think we're living in a world where both Shaheed and Olave can be really good for this team. And, moving forward, this game kind of got ahead of the Panthers after the second quarter. Like by the second quarter, it was like 30-0 or something like that, right? And so you just continue controlling the game clock, just get out of there, run the ball, do some throws out and things like that you don't even have to try hard to get Olave involved. You already won the game at that point. So I think that's what happened here. When you start playing defenses that are a little bit more difficult than the Panthers, you'll see Olave do well. You'll see the results that you want from maybe your first receiver that you got. So I'm not sounding alarm here. I'm staying calm, hoping for better weeks later down the season.
Yep. Number 1 running back on the board here, Raheem Mostert, 6 carries, 9 yards, 2 catches, 10 yards, 2.9 fantasy points. Shove it. What is the outlook on this Raheem the Dream?
I'm scared. Absolutely. All right. So injuries, he got injured, I think late in the fourth quarter. And so that's all, recipe for disaster there. There's a guy by the name Jaylen Wright that's speedy, that's fast, that's ready to take over or just, start if Achane and Mostert is injured. So aging back at the age of 30, I understand this is the Miami Dolphins team, but he worries me. And if Jaylen Wright comes out Thursday Night Football playing amazing or even Jeff Wilson, then Mostert scares me. And this is a guy that I'm like, oh man, if I have other running backs, I'm going to start them over Mostert. Definitely on Thursday night, even moving forward. This is something to monitor, and I'm definitely worried about this.
Yeah. Again, the age cliff can come so quickly. Obviously, this isn't a guy that in his entire career has ever been a workhorse or somebody that, gets three down work. So he's not getting beaten to death. So that's why when he's age 32, he's still electric and he's super fast. But I think it's an abdominal or a chest, some sort of injury that is reoccurring. That is something that he has had in the past. Again, he's an older running back. They drafted a really young, spry, just as fast running back, like you said, by the name of Jaylen Warren, and a 28-year-old Jeff Wilson, Jaylen Wright, sorry, and a 28-year-old veteran Jeff Wilson is still there. So when they both got hurt, Jeff Wilson looked good last week. So I think there's a situation where Achane is also hurt right now and they're playing on Thursday night. So I think we understand how dynamic the Dolphins backfield can be. So you always want a piece of that pie and you're always going to take a risk on that because if it pays off massively, like Devon Achane did, like Raheem Mostert did last year, right? So like you said, Jaylen Wright, 100% somebody that you want to grab, have on your bench. Jeff Wilson, even on a short week right now, somebody you would absolutely want to stash and grab. But with Raheem Mostert, I am leaning more towards sounding the alarm simply because there are people that can come in and take the reins really easily, really quickly. He's not like LaDainian Tomlinson past his prime that you're like, man, this is like a top echelon running back that we have to respect, still give the work, right? It could be 3 weeks and all of a sudden Raheem Mostert is completely out of the rotation simply because there is younger, electric, more spry running backs that are playing the position. So that is why I am also sounding the alarm there. The reality is most people did draft or probably drafted Mostert to be their RB2, hopefully their RB3 if you went RB heavy early. But even if that's the case right now, it's week 1. We'll talk about players that you can pick up in waivers if you're scuffling a little bit from Raheem Mostert's situation. Next guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to make this really, really quick. 3 catches, 13 yards, 2.8 fantasy points. I do not give a flying F, okay? I do not care at all. Death taxes and Amon-Ra St. Brown being a complete, absolute stud, very productive. People, whoa, what about Jameson Williams? He's emerging. Oh my God, this is scary. Could he garner more targets? Yes, he absolutely could. And he should, because he's just as fast as like Xavier Worthy. Now they have somebody who can actually take the top off the defenses once they respect Jameson Williams' ability to be able to catch a wide open pass, because we've seen last year that he dropped wide open bombs and things like that. So, it's not as respected. If he can produce 2-3 weeks like he did week 1, then that actually helps Amon-Ra. It finally opens up the underneath where Amon-Ra now had to find the soft spot. There's going to be zones galore. There's going to be space galore for him to eat. So I think this is a complete anomaly. Don't care whatsoever. This offense, let's remind them, 14 of 17 indoors. So now 13 of 16 still left to play indoors. So again, I don't care at all. 21% target share. It's not like one guy got an insane amount of work and you have another guy that's emerging. It is still Amon-Ra St. Brown's receiving core, if you will. Yep. It's just JMO's been a nice surprise here in week 1.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I have nothing else to add to that. He's a stud. He's going to get his. This game, just the alignment of the Rams was not that great. They ran the ball the whole time during the overtime with David Montgomery, because that worked, and so that was the game script. So I don't think I'm not worried about this at all.
Yep. Terry McLaurin, though, are you a little worried there?
Terry McLaurin, I am a little bit worried, and I'm a little bit worried because I see Jayden Daniels taking away some of the passing attempts because he just runs the ball so much, right? He's going to, if he doesn't find people open, he's going to run the ball, and he's going to produce and get yards that way. Now, what I think needs to happen, I think Cliff Kingsbury will try to utilize him, and on the short passing games, like short game, get the ball off, because there are times where Jayden Daniels is getting sacked, and that can't happen. That's your rookie quarterback. So I think they adjust this week or next week by doing these quick slants. But if Terry McLaurin there was a deep bomb that he could have gotten, that changes his outlook as well. Maybe gets a touchdown on that play. So if things just kind of worked out in that one passing play, we're not having this conversation. But this is just something to monitor. Outside of DeAndre Hopkins, I haven't seen a receiver that has done very well on this Cliff Kingsbury offense, to tell you the truth, right? When you just have a rushing quarter, DeAndre Hopkins?
No, Cliff Kingsbury.
Cliff Kingsbury. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. And so it's one of those things where we've only seen Hopkins produce. Nobody else has been able to produce in this in his offense as a receiver, fantasy wise. So that worries me a little bit, but just something to monitor. I'm not going out and trading him. I'm just going to make sure. Let's see if they turn this around.
Yeah, I mean, 81% snap participation, 16.6% target share. Like you said, his biggest knock is going to be the fact that Jayden loves to run. Like you said, Jayden's dropping back, looking right. I don't even know if he's looking left yet, and he's already choosing to run, right? And the offensive line doesn't give him any help in that regard, that he doesn't have time to go through 3 reads, 4 reads right now. His offensive line's pretty bad. But the biggest thing that I'm going to keep talking about that's going to help Terry McLaurin is Jayden Daniels. One of his best throwing assets or features is he's got amazing touch on the deep ball. He absolutely loves the deep ball. His deep ball rate was the highest in all of college football last year. So him missing that with Terry McLaurin is just simply the fact that it's week 1. It's adjustment in the NFL, and you're adjusting to the chemistry that you have with your new receiver. I have no doubts that if that's something that he continues to attempt to throw, he's going to be putting that on the money. And there's nobody better on that team right now to catch those passes than TMC. So I think as much as we're not happy with his performance in week 1, we want to see more target share, but the fact that his best attribute is throwing the deep ball, they did attempt one, and he was there had the ball been perfectly thrown, and I think that would have been a touchdown. That gives me a little less pause on this situation. So I'm still going to stay calm on Terry McLaurin. The other aspect is, again, let's keep hitting on this. Their defense is ass. Their secondary is ass. They're going to be in negative game scripts probably all 17 games. So we have to assume garbage time will help Terry McLaurin out dramatically. Shove it. Mark Andrews, your guy, Mark Andrews. This feels like forgotten thought already because it happened on Thursday, but let's talk about it real quick. 2 catches, 14 yards, 2.4 fantasy points, 74% snap count, 4.9% target share. Isaiah Likely, the backup tight end, had 12 targets. Zay Flower with 10. Backup running back Justice Hill with 8. Rashad Bateman, nobody, with 5. And then Mark Andrews and Derrick Henry, who only played like 44% of snaps, had 2 targets. So he was way down in the pecking order in terms of targets, but I am so calm in this situation. I just want to know in your situation as an actual owner of Andrews, I don't own him in any league, so I can be calm. Are you calm when it comes to Mark Andrews?
I wasn't calm when the game was going on. And then
Yeah.
seeing how week one progressed, if you look at the tight ends that scored, right? Isaiah Likely did really well. And there's one more tight end. Njoku did well as well. But then after that, it's just kind of a drop off where no one actually shines in the tight end landscape. So now I'm not as worried as I was. And I think that I was talking to Shisho, and through our text that we have, and he was saying, like, that's part of the script where they were throwing the ball out to Likely, and Likely was getting a lot of those targets that were easy because the Chiefs were giving that to them. So moving forward, that's just a sign of, Mark Andrews should get his. He was on their field even more than Likely was. Now Likely will produce, but I think there's a world where both of these guys will be just fine. So I am not sounding the alarm anymore after how week one transpired. I'm okay. I'm going to hold on. And I think things go back to normal starting week 2.
Yeah, and if you were sounding the alarm, I would put you at ease so easily here because, again, let's think about what transpired here. We wanted Zay Flowers to take the next step, and ironically enough, his size really limits his ability to take the next step and be more than just, screen underneath gadgety player where he can make guys look silly, right? He's got that electricity, but are you expecting him to catch 35-yard post routes or 35 yards, corner routes, things like that? That's not his game.
No.
So the Ravens this week played 12 personnel, more than the number one team in the NFL if you average it out all of last season, right? So this was an anomaly. This wasn't a matchup that they felt that they could take advantage of, and rightfully so. That's what they did. If you looked, there were some times where Mark Andrews was pretty open, but on majority of snaps, he was getting some form of overshadow bracket coverage, even if it was like soft, right? Even if it was, and he's not quick enough to like be able to deceptively beat a bracket coverage based on his route running, right? He's more of a physical body that needs some space and has catch radius. So I think the script just allowed for Likely to exploit the defenses. Like you said, not a knock on Andrews long-term. It's more so an outlook that if they do run 12 personnel as much as they did, both of these guys have a world to be very good fantasy football players. And so Isaiah Likely becomes a massive pickup waiver wire edition this week, especially because, like you mentioned, the tight end landscape, we come into this season talking about this is not the first year that it's a desolation. There's actually so much depth. And then every single tight end takes a complete dump in week 1, except for Isaiah Likely. So he is definitely somebody you should go out and pick up, but not with any sort of hesitation at the idea that Andrews can't continue to produce.
Right.
Zamir White, Mr. Zamir White played 44% of snaps. That is the biggest number that concerns me. Guy had 13 carries for 44 yards. He actually saw 2 targets, had 2 catches for 1 yard, fumbled the ball once, but Alexander Mattison played 60% of snaps. It wasn't like a negative game script. The Chargers came away with the game late in the game. It was like the fourth quarter that they put together 2 possession lead. So most of the game was pretty normal. And I think after maybe Zamir White fumbled, Mattison came into favor, but we had Antonio Pierce come out afterwards and say they're going to ride the hot hand. So if you're somebody that bought Zamir White stock, you don't like to hear that. That doesn't mean that there can't be weeks where he's the hot hand and he's going to produce for you. But I was in a 0 RB situation in my dynasty league, and Zamir White is my RB1. So I'm not in a great spot right now. I'm not happy about that. Luckily, Jerome Ford to the rescue, but not what you want to hear if you're a Zamir White owner. Again, hot hand means that there will be weeks he will produce, but all of a sudden, hey, there's nobody else in this backfield. Alexander Mattison was so bad with the Vikings. He should not compete. Even in preseason, Zamir White was the guy, but none of that matters right now. Week 1 in real football, the guy only saw 44% participation. So I am, to some extent, sounding the alarm here because there is a true competition. If at worst it is a split, because I'm only saying that optimistically, right? Right now, Mattison leads the charge. So I'm just saying that as a Zamir White owner, that it's probably going to be a split with the hot hand. But right now, I am sounding the alarm on Zamir White. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I think this Raiders team is just didn't do well last week, right? And they want to run the ball, and we're seeing Zamir White has, when he played last year, he averaged 18.1 points per game. So it's not like he can't do it, right? I think this team as a whole just needs to be better. They start moving the chains and start, really getting better on offense. I think the Zamir White carries will just come because, I mean, how can you really trust Mattison, right? Mattison is just like, he's an average running back. He's not he's not a guy that's going to be doing crazy things, breaking tackles here and there and things like that. I mean, you're not going to get as efficiency with Mattison as I think you will with Zamir White. So I am not as concerned with Zamir White. I also didn't draft him thinking he's going to be an RB2. I drafted him thinking he's like RB3 with some, other running backs. So hopefully most people don't have him as RB2. If you do, then you're kind of worried. But again, I think after week one, we should be fine just because we've seen him produce in previous year.
I will say it's kind of crazy for somebody who only saw 44% snap participation to get 13 carries, right? 13 carries is a pretty decent work size, workload for a running back when you're only seeing 44% of snap count. Now, that just means that it seems like Madison is the back for pass catching situations, which doesn't help Zamir White at all because you want him to be a 3-down horse, especially if you're in half point PPR or full point PPR. But even if that's the case, there's still some fantasy value. But again, we're talking about a team that you mentioned didn't play well. I don't know that they're going to play very well most of the season. So are there going to be touchdown opportunities for Zamir White? I mean, not very many probably. So what that means is he has to win with volume. And if he's not getting volume, then like, what is he doing for you?
That's true too. That's true. I mean, it's week one, man. Let's see what happens. Let's wait 4 weeks and see if we still have the same conversation.
All right. Are you sounding the alarm on Drake London or are you staying calm?
Yeah, I am sounding the alarm on Drake London. I think
it's week one. You just said it's week one. What do you mean?
Man, Kirk Cousins and this offensive lineman was devoured by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Shame on, it sucks. It sucks that Kirk had to do that, had to go through that. But 2 catches, 15 yards. Drake London is a guy that I am definitely worried about because, he hasn't produced ever. And then now we're asking him to produce as a wide receiver 1. And I just don't know if that's that guy, if he's the guy for you. And where was he drafted? He was drafted as,
the basically first, second round. So he's probably most people's wide receiver 1, unless they did wide receiver stack. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's the fact that never produced before, didn't produce in week 1. And it's just kind of like, I'm a little bit worried. Obviously, I'm not going to go out and trade Drake London or drop Drake London, but definitely a little bit worried about his outlook for the future.
Yeah, some things I am worried. I am worried because of ADP. I think he has a chance to be a very, very solid wide receiver 2, potentially back end. Amazing, probably wide receiver 3 or flex. But again, he'd been drafted as a wide receiver 1, as a bona fide wide receiver 1. So that is my concern. But some things to potentially put that to ease. He had 100% snap participation, right? So the first thing is opportunity. You're not going to get opportunities without being on the field. He was on the field the entire game. So not even really, really well producing players this week don't see 100% snap participation. Now, we don't think Ray McLeod is going to lead the team in targets, right? So I view that this week as an anomaly. You mentioned the offensive line not holding up. Let's talk about what the reality of the situation is. Kirk Cousins is one of the best play action quarterbacks that we have seen in the last 10 to 15 years because, again, when it's deceptive and there's not somebody running at him and he has time to convey, he's as accurate as they come. The Atlanta Falcons in week 1, Shovit, ran exactly 0 play action plays. So somebody tried to make that make sense. The only way I can make this make sense to you is, I don't know how much of this game you got a chance to watch, but a lot of what they were lining up Kirk in was pistol formation or shotgun formation, right? So there was very few under center formation. And I forget what the exact stat I saw somewhere is, but when he had the formations where he had to move his legs back and step back a lot of those were run plays. So all that means is there a problem still with Kirk Cousins and his Achilles, with him not being able to pivot, him not being able to plant, and him not feeling completely comfortable with, making 8 steps and rolling around on a play action? Because why the hell would you not have one of the best play action quarterbacks run a single play action in week 1? It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I watched this game as a Steelers fan, and it's because you have TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Cam Hayward coming at you. And if you try to roll out, TJ Watt on the outside is going to come and eat your brains out. Like, he's going to demolish you. So I think a lot of that went into, as far as not holding the ball, releasing the ball faster, and trying to get the run game established. And it just didn't work out the way they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, play action is always risky because, again, you're taking a long time for the play to develop. But the reason it's play action is there's a blocking scheme in place to prevent somebody just from running free and killing you, right? That's, again, if we look at the last 4 years of Kirk Cousins, he is so good with play action because it's schemed to protect him, to give him enough time, to not have somebody running at his face. Obviously, not every team has TJ Watt, but there are still teams with Myles Garrett and stuff like that you still can run a play action. It's not like they attempted one and got destroyed by TJ Watt and we're like, you know what, we can't do this the rest of the game. They didn't even try to run a single play action. So just really peculiar. definitely something that causes some concern. I don't know if the Penix stuff is already rumbling, but that can't be good for the Atlanta Falcons. That can't be good for Kirk Cousins' mental psyche, because if you watch quarterback, you know that the guy thinks a lot. So that can't be good for the classic overthinker there. But I am a little concerned with Drake London just simply because of ADP. But whether Kirk Cousins starts to get better or they eventually bring Michael Penix into the fold, I still think Drake London will get tons of opportunity. It's just be nice to see him actually produce and us not project something that has still not happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
Last one, shove it. Dalton Kincaid. Poor old Dalton Kincaid. 1 catch, 11 yards, 1.6 fantasy points, 84% snap count, only 8.7% target share. Josh Allen spread the ball out, man. He spread the ball around quite a bit. Keon Coleman had 5 targets and led the team. Shakir and Cook with 3, and there were 5 other players, including Kincaid and Knox, by the way, who Shishote kindly mentioned. Why are we forgetting that there's another tight end that exists there that still plays? Both had 2 targets. So, and again, the last thing I look at when we talk about all this is game script. A lot of times, a lot of these contextual numbers can get thrown out the window. If you're up 47-0, why are you not throwing the football, or why are you throwing the football? But this was a great game script. They were losing early. They had to come from behind. It was back and forth. So you expected the ball to be thrown to a guy that projected to potentially have the number 1 target share for the Buffalo Bills. And that was not the case. Now, again, it's week 1, but are you concerned at all with the fact that this man saw only 2 targets in a game where a team that lost, what do we talk about? 200 and something vacated targets last year. And XYZ, all those numbers, to not get more than 2 targets in a game that they were losing early and was potentially a shootout. Is there any concern, or are you sounding any sort of alarm there?
Yeah, losing early, shootout, but you also saw Josh Allen run the ball often as well. He ran the ball to get, convert those first downs and things like that. So I don't know if you definitely, you don't sound the alarm in this situation. You just kind of think that that's an anomaly and that Dalton Kincaid will be just fine. There's enough targets to go around. Now, Keon Coleman had had the most target share, so that's something that you like and someone that you should go out and target. But I think Dalton Kincaid, I mean, he's one of the better route running tight ends, and so he should get his in the upcoming weeks. I'm not worried about this one either.
Yeah, again, we talk about the tight end position as a whole because the production at the tight end position was so bad in week 1. It's hard to sound the alarm on one of your top 5 drafted tight ends, especially when, like all of them did bad. Kelsey did bad. Andrews did bad. Kincaid did bad. McBride wasn't great either. So there wasn't a lot of production from the tight end position as a whole. So I don't sound the alarm in that regard as well. And I do also think what we saw is the Arizona Cardinals, even with Marvin Harrison Jr. basically having 1 catch for 4 yards, scored 28 points on this Buffalo Bills defense. So I think that what I thought coming into the season and what week 1 showed me is that the Buffalo Bills don't really have a defense. So I think they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. They lost a lot of key veteran players on the back end of the secondary. So I expect them to be in shootouts, which means it's advantageous for Josh Allen. It's advantageous for Dalton Kincaid, and it's probably advantageous for the teams that play the Buffalo Bills. That's it, man. That's it for staying calm and sounding the alarm. There's probably more players that people are concerned with. And if there are, put them in the comments, tweet at us, DM us. We will absolutely respond to whatever you got. Let's end the episode real quick with giving the people what they want. Show it. The waiver wire watch list. Waiver wire goes off tonight at 3 a.m. What are we looking at in terms of waiver wire pickups? Give me some.
All right, for the QBs, based on the list that we have here, we got Baker Mayfield at Detroit. We got Matthew Stafford at Arizona and Jared Goff versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about it. If you had Jordan Love, he got hurt. So you obviously probably need a quarterback replacement. These are the best quarterbacks, I feel like, on the open market right now to produce. Baker looked incredible. Now, again, it was the Commanders, right? It was the Commanders, and they have one of the worst secondaries I've ever seen. So I'm going to wait to be like, Baker's amazing. This is a resurgence. But I do think he has 250 and 2 in him probably every single game for as long as Mike Evans and Chris Godwin remain on that team. So that's why I think he has a very solid base and a floor. So I don't hate Baker Mayfield. We've already talked about the Jared Goff. Every game almost indoor Goff absolutely eats, specifically if he's at home. Indoor Goff at home, he eats. So that's somebody you want to start. And then Matthew Stafford at Arizona. What did we just talk about? Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen had a field day with that team. They're not going to play a lot of defense. They're probably going to be in a lot of shootouts. And despite losing Puka Nacua, we know that the Rams are not shorthanded when it comes to weapons. So that's another player I like. If you want to get nasty, shove it. If you want to get disgusting, I am on the full fade, the Washington Commanders. Danny Dimes plays the Washington Commanders, you probably think, what are you talking about, sweetheart? Are you out of your mind? Did you watch the Giants? Did you watch Daniel Jones? Well, what does Daniel Jones do, man? He runs the football. He didn't get to run the football against this matchup because there was a better defensive team. The Vikings are fast. Brian Flores' defensive schemes are incredible. But what did we just talk about? The Commanders. He's playing the Commanders, who have one of the worst secondaries. I expect Malik Nabers to eat. I expect Daniel Jones to be able to run. So with that being said, I know nobody should be in a week 2 situation to be disgusting enough to stream Daniel Jones. But if somehow you're in 14, 16, 18 team leagues and he's the only guy there, I'm telling you, not a bad spot against the Commanders, who I think just are abysmal when it comes to defense. Are you going to fight me on that? Fight me on that.
I kind of want to, just because I feel like that first game with Washington, I think that I almost called them the Baker Mayfield, but the Buccaneers have Evans, have Godwin, have this new rookie receiver McMillan. Bucky Irving played well. Rashid White played well. So there was a lot going on. I don't know if I can just say the Commanders offense, led by, the former defensive coordinator of the Cowboys, who was very good. I don't know if that is a problem just quite yet. So to be honest with you, this is why I'm considering starting the Commanders defense. But you're right. Daniel Jones can still get us if he just runs the ball enough. So we shall see.
Yeah. I think there's a world where Commanders defense could have a good day and Daniel Jones could have a good day, because again, he can run for 100 yards and a touchdown and throw 2 picks and you'd still be fine either way. So I think there is a world where they could coexist, but let's hope you don't have to pick up Daniel Jones and start him. Long list of running back, Show it. Who do we got?
All right. The running back list. We have J.K. Dobbins at Carolina. We've got your boy, Jordan Mason at Minnesota, who's probably going to start with CMC still out. Zach Charbonnet at New England Patriots. Alexander Madison at Baltimore after we talked about Zamir White. That's a little scary. Tank Bigsby versus Cleveland. Looks like he is 50-50 backfield there with Etienne. Bucky Irving at Detroit, looking over to take over Rashid White. I mean, he looks like an explosive running back that's just able to be more efficient. I think Rashid White still is going to command the pass catching downs, and he's going to get his fair share of that. But Bucky Irving just looks explosive as far as the running game goes. Yeah. He looks really good. Jeff Wilson, Jalen Wright versus Buffalo, depending on the Mostert and HN injuries. If both of those guys are out, then I think certainly Jeff Wilson. I'm going to lean Jeff Wilson, and I'm going to say Jalen Wright as well. Both guys you should have on your team. And Jaleel McLaughlin versus Steelers. Javonte Williams didn't have such a great day. Jaleel McLaughlin also looks explosive on this team. Looks to take over that RB1 role at some point. And then Justice Hill versus Las Vegas as the last waiver pick for running back.
Yeah, some of these are disgusting. Some of these are probably players that and this isn't necessarily playing week 2. This is more so of an outlook of the rest of the season. Right. J.K. Dobbins looks like the lead back. So if you drafted Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins was not drafted, he's clearly the better running back. His history has always just been injury riddled. So there is some risk there. But right now, I would say the upside to me is with J.K. Dobbins as the backfield in the Chargers world. We talked about Jordan Mason. Obviously, if CMC is out, we saw what he did last night. He's a plug-and-play system running back that can produce in an offense that will give him the ability to produce. So he should be your number 1 waiver wire addition if he's not already drafted or rostered on the spot. Zach Charbonnet is more so because Ken Walker exited with an injury. So he's still dealing with an injury. If he's hurt, you plug and play Zach Charbonnet. That's a no-brainer. Madison, we just talked about his 60% snap share to Zamir White. So somebody that could end up eating into more Zamir White opportunities. You talked about Tank Bigsby splitting with ETN, which is kind of coming out of nowhere. We expected it last year. Didn't happen, and it's kind of happening this year. I know it's 1 week, but if you're an ETN drafter, you also drafted that man to probably be your RB1 in the second round. So not what you want to see there. You talked about Bucky Irving kind of jumping off the page. Running backs for the Dolphins. It's a short week. If you need to waste a waiver pick this week just because, I don't know, your RB2 isn't great, like you went hero RB and you're dealing with Zamir White or something like that, I think it's worth a risk on Jeff Wilson Jr. To take, to use your waiver spot, because the reality is if one of these 2 guys are hobbled, that means Jeff Wilson's going to work. If both of these guys are hobbled, that means Jeff Wilson's absolutely going to work. So I think that is a no-brainer. You mentioned it. McLaughlin could win that backfield job by the end of the season. Javonte Williams didn't look great, and McLaughlin has some juice. And Justice Hill, I don't know that the Ravens are going to be in a reverse game script where they're going to be down and have to throw a lot. I think the idea is that team's going to win a lot and be running the football a lot. But Justice Hill, third down back, Justice Hill. 2-minute offense back. It's not just spelling Derrick Henry. It just seems like, and John Harbaugh came out and said it, we did not sign Henry to run the ball 30 times. So when you need a disgusting bye-week fill-in, PPR, half PPR leagues, Justice Hill could be your guy because he's going to catch some balls out of the backfield.
Yeah, all these guys that we have mentioned definitely need to be rostered. Waiver pickups depends on your team, I think. But if they're available, 4:00 in the morning and no one's picked them up, you better pick them up and have them rostered on your team just in case injuries happen, if anything.
Yep, absolutely. Real quickly, I'll run through the receivers. Jamison Williams had a nice game. He plays the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. Another guy that, again, you want to have him rostered because you're banking on upside of a player who's drafted top 12, has the speed of Xavier Worthy that just has been dealing with injuries, was suspended because of the gambling bullshit. So if he truly took the next step, then he is a potential league winner. So that is definitely somebody you want to have rostered. Puka Nacua is on the IR, huge, which means Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, if you're really disgusting, Jordan Whittington are the next in line wide receivers on that offense. Last year, it was Demarcus Robinson. I liked what I saw from Tyler Johnson, but right now, if you're banking on somebody, I still think it's Demarcus Robinson because he actually had a role even when Puka and Cooper Kupp were on the field at times. So I have to believe that maybe in situations now where Puka's out, Demarcus Robinson is somebody that takes the lead there. But out of those three guys, juggle it in the air to see who's going to end up winning that one for you. And then Brandon Cooks caught a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb didn't have to have a great day, but Ferguson got hurt. He may not miss as much time as we expected, but there has to be a number 2 target on the Cowboys. And they're not going to have easy wins like they did against the Browns every week. So in passing games, I think Brandon Cooks is still the wide receiver 2. So somebody in deeper leagues if you want to target. Tight ends, we already talked about it. Isaiah Likely, go out and grab him. He is going to get some work. And if you're in deeper leagues, Colby Parkinson for the Rams, he got targeted quite a bit. And again, no more Puka Nacua. So we know they love to use Higbee, and now Parkinson is replacing that.
One guy I want to add in that tight end list, you just mentioned Jake Ferguson's out. Add Shoemaker for the tight end 2 for the Dallas Cowboys. Just for some red zone targets, he could get something like that. Just take over what Jake Ferguson does for this Dallas Cowboys team.
Yep. Again, we're looking for somebody to be the number 2 target receiver from Dak Prescott and the Cowboys offense. So you want to take as many chances as you can from good offenses and see if you can strike gold. Defense streams. You already mentioned it earlier. What did you say? The Chargers. The Chargers are probably by far the best streaming option this week because they are playing the Carolina Panthers. We are fading the Panthers until Bryce Young and anybody on that offense can show some competence. And I trust Jim Harbaugh. I trust the Chargers. They played a really stout defense against the Vegas Raiders, who aren't great on offense, but again, neither are the Panthers. So right now, you are fading the Panthers. You talked about the Jaguars. Did you mention the Jaguars? I don't know if you mentioned the Jaguars.
I mentioned the Commanders, but go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned the Commanders, which that I'm going to leave to your advice. I personally would not start the Commanders after what I saw display on defense. But they are playing Danny Dimes, who we already talked about, and his abysmal performance. The Jaguars are facing the Cleveland Browns, who, again, lost more players on offense, and Deshaun Watson, I still have no faith in. I think the Jaguars have a really good pass rush, and Deshaun Watson continues to take sacks, and their tackles are continuing to hurt. So I think there is an opportunity for some production there. And then lastly, the Texans play the Bears. I wouldn't personally start this, but if you're desperate, the Bears offense looked dysfunctional. It might take Caleb Williams a couple weeks to get acclimated into the NFL, and the Texans are a advantageous secondary and defense. So if he's going to continue to struggle like he did against the Titans, that's another option there. Do you have any other defenses to potentially see?
I'm just going to say, wrap up what I've been saying this whole podcast, but basically Commanders defense, I am hard fading the, Daniel Jones and this New York Giants team. I think that the Commanders defense last week was against a tough Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. And so I think better days are ahead for this Commanders defense that's playing the New York Giants this week.
If you're streaming Daniel Jones, make sure you let me know. If you're streaming Commanders defense, make sure you let Chuba know. I'd be curious to see which one ends up panning out for you. That is the episode. What a fantastic first week of football. Man, oh man, we have 16 more weeks of this, and then we have the playoffs. So get excited. We are not going anywhere. If you enjoy this type of content, please hit the like, hit the subscribe button. Help spread the word. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok are where our socials are. I am Sweetcard. That is Shovit. We are the only playbook. Enjoy the rest of your week. We will be back tomorrow to preview week 2. We are going to be right there with you all season. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Take care.